And we're going to start with the coniferous forest. Now, coniferous forest is called a coniferous forest because of cones, cone bearing. And so these are like pine cones. Those are coniferous trees. And this is, okay, it's a fake Christmas tree. But this would be like a coniferous tree because it has many of the characteristics of a coniferous tree. First of all, let's talk about the climate in a coniferous forest. It's very cold in the wintertime. As a matter of fact, that's one reason why these trees are shaped the way they are, so that it's narrower at the top, Christmas tree shape, and wider at the bottom. That means the snow can fall on it, but not break the tree. If it was like a big wide tree like in the rainforest, all the branches would break off. So it's very cold in the winter, and the water is, well, it's frozen. It's in the form of snow, it's in the form of ice, and winter is the longest season. So it's very cold in a coniferous forest. Let's talk about the tree adaptations. Okay, like I said already, they're going to be kind of a Christmas tree shape. They have pine cones, and they have needle-like, here, show the needle-like.
Zoom in.
Yeah, needle-like.
Like needles.
Exactly so. And the reason for that is they conserve moisture. Now wait a minute, I just talked about all this water in the form of snow and ice. Why would you need to conserve moisture?
Because it's...
Go ahead, tell us.
You tell us.
No, you tell us.
No, you tell
No, you tell us. Okay, I'll tell it. It's because all the water is frozen and the roots can't pick it up. So what happens is the trees actually have to be able to conserve moisture. They have to conserve that water. So what they do, they have very narrow leaves, kind of like in the desert. They either have no leaves or very narrow leaves. In the deciduous forest, they have no leaves, they lose it. So they have needle-like leaves. Oh, by the way, when the weather warms up a little bit, the needles can actually use photosynthesis even when it's below freezing. Okay, so what do animals do? Well, animals have thick fur because it's
Stay
cold,
warm.
and they migrate to warm areas. And here's a couple other facts. The soil is thin but acidic, and there's very little biodiversity. Okay, so let's talk about another type of forest.
Wait.
Oh, yeah, wait. What's the main fact about a coniferous forest? Rainey, help us out. What is the main thing about a coniferous forest?
Throw it.
What
Go
is
up
it?
there. Come
Show
on.
us. Show us what it is. It's the snow.
Snow.
Yes, of course it is. Go ahead. You can do more snow. More snow, Rainey. More snow. Very good. And more snow. And that's what we get on this snow. Put some on their Christmas tree.
Snow.
Oh, yeah. Said that. One more.
Yeah.
Awesome job. That's for Rainey.
Good job. Good job.
Now.
All right, today we're going to start with a little bit of review. We've actually talked about both natural selection and selective breeding before. So what is the difference? Pause this and see if you can come up with the difference between natural selection and selective breeding. Go ahead, pause. Now, selective breeding is, well, it's the process of breeding plants and animals for something that we as humans really like. It can be something very practical, like, I don't know, more meat on a cow or for beef, or something we just think is kind of cute, like a Chihuahua maybe we like because it makes a good lap dog. So the big difference is humans choose the traits that we as humans find desirable, and that's selective breeding. Oh, and by the way, it may not particularly make that plant or animal survive very well back in the wild. In fact, most of the times it won't survive very well. Now, dogs are a pretty good example of selective breeding. We use dogs for different things. As a matter of fact, through the centuries, we've used them for work animals where they've herded sheep. We've used them as protection, so they've learned to fight. And we've used them for fashion. Ones that just look plain pretty, or ones that make really good pets. We used them for hunting. We've used them for all kinds of things. And because of that, now we have dogs that are all different shapes, colors, and sizes. But we've selected those traits, and once again, that doesn't make them particularly good at surviving on their own. What's your favorite kind of dog? Now remember, we've also talked about natural selection, also called survival of the fittest. Now that just means that if an animal survives, it has a chance to pass on its trait. So if some animal isn't very well adapted, it will never pass on its trait, so it won't survive. So it's kind of nature selects what the best traits are. It's not like anybody just chooses. It's just the ones that survive are the only ones that get to, pass on their traits. So it's called survival of the fittest. And one way we've looked at that is called natural selection through finches. And we're going to talk a little bit about a man named Charles Darwin and what he learned about natural selection through the beaks on finches. Now, Charles Darwin was a scientist. He was on a sailing boat called the Beagle, and he went to all these different places around the world, including a place called the Galapagos Islands. And he noticed when he got to the Galapagos, there were a bunch of small birds called finches, and that they had different beaks. Like some of the beaks were fat, some were skinny, but it depended on the kind of beak they had, also depending on what they ate. So he started noticing a lot of things that were same and a lot of things that were different. Okay, after many years of research, Charles Darwin had a hypothesis. He thought that perhaps all these finches were really, at one time, were related to one original group of birds that blew into the Galapagos Islands, maybe on a hurricane or something, because they had a lot of similar traits. In fact, the things that really were different were the beaks. Well, we call all of them being related, having a common ancestor. That's what those birds were that blew in thousands of years ago. And by the way, DNA testing and genetic testing has proven that, yes, indeed, the Galapagos Island finches are all come from a common ancestor. What happened is these birds blew in on a hurricane, and there's always differences between individual birds, and some had a little bit different beak that was better for insects. They better to find and eat insects. Other ones had maybe harder beaks that were better for breaking open seeds. Well, soon there were different species of these finches depending on what they ate, and as they continued to go and find different sources of food, they started to become more and more different species. But you can see in the diagram here, they're all really related to one first species. That's the common ancestor of all these species of finches. Now, for a little bit more information, there's a short video of Darwin's finches. You can kind of see if you can notice the different beaks and what they're used for. And I got a question for you. Look at the picture down below. Is it a result of natural selection or selective breeding? Well, you decide. Tell me why you think that's which one it is. Oh, and by the way, if you have any interesting questions you can think of, go ahead and write them down.